Hey everyone, in today's Setting Up Shop, I wanted to talk about uh, some tools that get overlooked a lot in setting up a shop and in tooling up, but they're indispensable. And specifically, I'm talking about hammers and mallets, uh, or hitty things, as my kids might have said, a few years ago when they were little. Things that if you need to impart a bit more force into the operation, you use one of these to impart force, right? So we're talking hammers, we're talking mallets, we're talking clubs. Starting out with the humble claw hammer, okay? So this is probably maybe around a 16-ounce claw hammer. This guy does a lot more than drive or pull nails. So several hundred years ago, back in the 17th century, Joseph Moxon wrote about the use of the hammer for adjusting planes. Now, this is the kind of hammer he was talking about, the same kind that you drive nails with. He said, if your iron be too rank, knock with a hammer upon the breech of the stock, and afterwards upon the wedge. For this knocking upon the breech, if you knock hard enough, 'twill raise the iron a little and set it fine. If you knock it not hard enough, you must knock it again, till the iron do rise. But if you knock too hard, it will rise the iron too much, that its edge will rise above the sole into the mouth of the stock, and on and on. However, he's talking about you use this hammer to adjust your wooden bodied planes. So quite a few of you probably have seen or heard of the plane adjusting hammers that are out there. And these can work well for adjusting. You have your strike button here. You tap to loosen, or you can tap back here to loosen, and then you tighten with that. However, we have started kind of moving away from those. We've moved towards using just the basic claw hammer for our plane adjustments. There's a little more weight and heft behind it, and basically it makes things quicker. And so if it was good enough for Moxon and Nicholson, it's good enough for us in the shop. So this hammer also does drive nails, and it pulls nails, and any little whacking operation that you need, this has got you covered. So we hang one of these right on the wall, basically by every workstation we could have. So it's good to have a few of these. You misplace them, they're the kind of thing that tends to walk away sometimes. So just have some claw hammers around. So for driving chisels, those sorts of operations, you have a couple different options. You have, this is like considered a carver's mallet, right? This one is turned. It's a very heavy hardwood, but that's like a traditional carver's mallet. So you're driving on a round surface, which has never caused me trouble. I suppose some could say you could glance off or whatever. If that is an issue, you can go with this old guy, which turns the grain of your striking surface perpendicular, so you're striking with end grain. So now there's no way of glancing off since you have a nice flat face, but this is also a way of getting a little more heft behind what you're doing. And I have definitely had instances where I've had a carving mallet like this that I've really liked, and sadly the handle has broken off or has become damaged. So what I do is I saw the handle off, I'll bore a hole, and I'll put the handle in perpendicular. And that's a way of prolonging the lifespan of your favorite carving mallet, maybe for a little bit. So these things are expendable, especially if you're using it a little more rigorously, like if you're doing timber framing operations or big, heavy joinery type operations. This is one I made out of ironwood. Kind of a catch-all term for a few different species depending on where you live. Most people around the world have like a local variety of ironwood, but this is hornbeam, and so that's often called ironwood here in New England. But this has lasted a few years. It might have a few more years to it. It's got some heft. You make this just out of a log. This was a sapling that big, and you cut a kerf all the way around your relieve down to it, and then you have your nice kind of non-symmetrical club type mallet that's good for whacking things until it falls apart, and then you make another one. But you should have a few of these around in the shop, and you will pick a favorite mallet and you'll start using it for everything, and you'll really find your favorite striking face and all that for these things. So again, it's super simple, just as a means of imparting energy through inertia onto an operation. Because a lot of times, you know, in carving, if you take up carving and you start to learn and you're comfortable with hand pressure and you feel like that gives you more control, then if you switch over to a carver's mallet, you'll actually find that having that little bit of extra inertia at your disposal gives you more control in the carving. So a lot of people who have started carving by hand very carefully, they find that they get comfortable with that. When they start carving with a mallet, they find, oh, actually I have more control because I have a little more oomph behind what I'm doing. So these are the kinds of things you use at a bench. The beautiful thing about the club or the mallet is that it's scalable depending on what you need to do. So over here by the stump, we have this one. So this is a heinous piece of wood. This has got knots all over, which is really kind of exactly what you need, because if you have knots with interlocking grain, the piece will tend to be able to take abuse a lot more. So this one we use for different operations like driving, and so we're beating on the fro with it. And we often, sometimes if we're splitting, we'll smack the back of an axe with it, depending on the axe, right? Some axes you don't want to do that because the eye is not forged to take that kind of striking. But I have one of these at home that is even bigger than this. It's like an entire 16-inch long piece of round firewood at the end of a handle. And I use that for splitting firewood with wedges. You can just set the wedge in and really give it to it. So the bigger it is, the more force it imparts as you're trying to hit things. But again, you can have whatever you need for whatever task you need to tackle. So that's the biggest club we have in here. And as I was saying about axes, the general rule of thumb is that you don't hit things with axes and you don't hit axes. However, that, if we look historically, a lot of historic and pre-industrial makers use their axes to knock things together, to even knock post and rung chairs together. They use the back of their axe to drive this furniture together. This variety of axe is called a Schlegel axe, or like sledge axe. So it was designed that the back of the pole is a hitting surface, and you can see there's a good bit of mushrooming there. This thing has driven wedges as well as felling trees and other things. So this kind of axe is designed to be a whacking tool, as well as a cutting tool and a shaping tool. And so we aren't too shy about using our bench axes and hatchets in the right application to be a hitting tool or driving tool, as well as a cutting tool. This style of axe, this is a Kent pattern style. There is a lot of iron here on the pole, and these can take that kind of abuse. They can take that kind of work. There are some more modern axes that they're a little finer around the eye, and oftentimes you can find axe heads of that style in junk bins at flea markets, and the eyes are all misshapen because they've been used as wedges or something, and they've been beat on and bent beyond repair. So you don't want to do that kind of thing. You really need to know the tool and know that it's up to that task. But I guess in summary, anytime that you need a little extra force in the shop for the work you're doing, there is a tool for that task. And obviously they're very simple. It's not rocket science. The way that you use a hammer to drive a nail, everybody from the youngest little kid who goes into grandpa's shop to see what's going on, he gets a hammer and nails. And it's just kind of intuitive to us. That's how you use these things. And so keep these things in mind. There are lots of options, and you just pick the ones that are comfortable with you as you are outfitting your shop.